What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, the new epic science fiction drama film, over 40 years in the making, long gestating project from Coppola. This film debuted to much fanfare and controversy earlier this year back at Cannes, and Coppola was able to find distribution, get this movie out via Lionsgate, although he has heavily financed this movie, famously selling his very successful winery business to get this over the line. And in a sense, Megalopolis and the story of how this movie was made is very much like a coda, a opus in a sense to Coppola's whole career, someone who has made and lost many fortunes over the course of being a director who doesn't want to compromise his vision, to say the least. And it goes without saying that any Coppola movie deserves attention. This is his first film in over a decade, and, he's the architect of one of, if not the greatest, four-film run ever, as people know. Godfather 1, Conversation, Godfather Part 2, and Apocalypse Now. I mean, say no more. It hasn't just been the struggle to find a distributor and financing in terms of this movie being a struggle, and that's, again, leaving out the fact that it took him so long to get this movie actually made. Coppola went out of his way to cast various actors deemed controversial for one way or another, namely Shia LaBeouf, Jon Voight, and Dustin Hoffman. There was also the huge PR snafu controversy regarding fake critic reviews panning the film. There was a lot of reporting about Coppola's on-set behavior and how he treated some people on set. And then, of course, controversial just for its audaciousness, I guess you could say, is the live actor element, which is a small piece of this film where there's a scene where Adam Driver's character is speaking out to someone physically standing in front of the screen at your theater. And I was actually able to see the movie in IMAX with someone doing that. Well, remains to be seen if that live element will be carried throughout most of its theatrical run. I don't think so. Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis is bold, audacious, indulgent, overlong, at times incomprehensible. The visual flair has lots of saturation, positioned as a fable about the fall of Rome in a modern, futurist society. The film is intellectually kind of all over the place, and I think its main statement is hard to really latch onto just because this is a movie that has so much inside of it, and like scene to scene, it's quite abrupt as we progress through this story. And yet, I do find Megalopolis a hard movie to forget. And it's not just the live actor element in my theater. That almost kind of glazed over me just because the sheer audaciousness of what I had seen in the first half of the film. Adam Driver's Caesar Catalina character is this designer architect with a utopian goal, and he's famously created this magical building compound, Megalon, and his core conflict is with the mayor of the city, Cicero, played by Giancarlo Esposito. That core plot, I think, works well, even if we don't get super deep with any one character, just because we're spending so much time across various subplots, and there's just so much stuff into the movie. But I kind of like the ending, I'm not going to lie. And for a movie that has tons of flaws and definitely moments that were dull to me, I also found things that I was definitely wrapped by. So certainly an unforgettable movie experience, and I honestly think it's fitting for like the conclusion of Coppola's career. I mean, he's in his 80s, he could certainly keep working. God knows Ridley Scott has proven you can be very prolific in your mid to late 80s. We know that. But this really kind of feels like the end of the line for Coppola, and I think it's cool that this like flawed epic is where he's leaving us. Does this light a candle to his great works of the 70s? Of course it doesn't. But to me, the sheer scope of the film is pretty unique as far as our standards go nowadays. That being said, mileage will vary on this film. You can look at the reviews. It's in the 50s on Rotten Tomatoes for a reason. This is a polarizing film based on its format, its length, its breadth of material. It makes sense that this is a film that's going to really straddle the line. The cast is obviously quite vast. I think Natalia Emanuel plays Julia, Cicero's daughter, who becomes the love interest of Driver's Catalina. I think Emanuel does a pretty good job in the movie for a character that's pretty thin, ultimately. Just kind of this party girl, daughter of the mayor character. There's not much under the hood there. She does a pretty nice job with it, though. Aubrey Plaza is a lot of fun as Wow Platinum, what a name. this like TV presenter host who starts trying to cozy up to power and first pursuing Catalina, then moving on to John Voight's Hamilton Crassus character, the wealthiest man in Megalopolis, this banker, and then afterwards Crassus's son, Claudio Pulcher, played by Shia LaBeouf. A lot of humor, a lot of fun stuff with the Plaza character. I honestly think John Voight's pretty good as Crassus. I mean, controversies galore with Voight these days. In the movie, I enjoyed him. I think his piece of the ending is pretty humorous with the bow and arrow. Also, Shia LaBeouf, again, controversies aside, with Shia, a very troubled, problematic guy, as we know. He's pretty great in this movie as Claudio just because he's so scheming and conniving and malevolent. Like, he's a really fun villain character because he's like a joke, but like the way he like straddles society, he's fun in like the Bacchanalian scenes, very much invoking, the indulgences of Rome. Is there some heavy-handed stuff in terms of LaBeouf's character having this populist Trumpian rise as he tries to secure power? Yes, it's pretty obvious, but I definitely enjoyed him in the movie. Small role for Lawrence Fishburne, who is like the driver of Caesar, but also the narrator of the film at times. The narration is certainly sporadic, but it's Fishburne's voice. Hard to be too critical of listening to that. Small roles from Talia Shire, Jason Schwartzman, Catherine Hunter. Dustin Hoffman is also in the movie as one of Cicero's like goons, fixers. And he's like in the movie so lightly, like it's very infrequent. He has he dies in like a flashback. Like there's like, oh, and he's gone. Like they show like a brief moment of him like getting hit by a car or something. I don't even know what it was. Didn't really make an impression too much. I think one thing that was talked about with Megalopolis is that there was a bit of a free-wheeling nature to how they portrayed some of the scripts. So I think the Hoffman character was certainly left on the cutting room floor. So he's almost in the movie for controversy's sake, given that Coppola's whole pitch on why he cast some of these guys. And obviously they're all great actors in their own regard, but he wanted to make a point of casting people that have been canceled or controversial in some way. That way, the movie Megalopolis could not be labeled as some woke, treatise by the morons who talk like that, given that it's a movie about like utopian, idealized, city living and whatnot. Noble, I guess. Doesn't seem like Hoffman had too much to it, though, to be honest. The dialogue in the movie is also pretty interesting just because it's really quite a mismatch. Like at times they're speaking like Shakespeare, they're speaking like, Greco-Latin Hellenist speech of, ancient Rome and whatnot. I mean, there's one scene which I think is really good, which is in like the Megalopolis stand-in for Madison Square Garden. This confrontation between Catalina and Cicero with a lot of the other supporting cast watching everything as they're standing above this like model of the city and coming to blows over their goals for Megalopolis. Driver just starts ripping into the Hamlet to be or not to be speech, which apparently was just like an in the moment note from Coppola that he then left in the movie. So there's like moments like that in this movie that, in a sense, you can't stop watching, but they're also incredibly striking and subversive, and certainly examples of things that will not work for some people. There's also lots of like visual flashes, almost like screensaver type visuals that intersperse throughout parts of the movie. Like I said, it's incredibly overstuffed, but it's certainly a movie that would warrant multiple viewings just because I think at that point you kind of latch on to the things that are more successful. And yeah, there's certain things to take away. I think visually, I think they do a decent job of like getting around the limited budget. And not that the movie was cheap, it wasn't 120 million, but like you have this urban Atlanta stand-in for New York City. There's certainly some New York things you can spot around like Times Square and whatnot. They heavily saturated. It gets quite bright. It's almost like the reverse of Zack Snyder, almost like the Schumacher Batman, actually. It's fun to contrast that visual flair you get to like the Fritz Lang 20s movie Metropolis, which is kind of the antecedent to this movie in terms of like utopian urban living movies. A lot here. I think the middle has some really slow stretches, and overall the movie was quite long. I think also the fact that I saw this early as like the simulcast of the New York Film Festival premiere this past Monday, where I actually watched like a 40-minute Q&A with Coppola, Robert De Niro, and Spike Lee. And let me tell you, Coppola was unforgettable listening to him rant and rave in real time, not knowing what he was going to say. But that also added 40 minutes to the experience. So I was in there about 3 hours, without getting up. So the movie itself is about 2.5 or so. But yeah, honestly, like, whether you like the movie or hate the movie, I just got to hand it to Coppola for wanting to take the swing, and making it happen, finding the money, selling his very lucrative business to get that done. It's kind of like the Kevin Costner Horizon situation where it's like, hey, you're a wealthy artisan. You want to make something that costs way too much and has almost no chance of recouping that money at the box office and with foreign sales and whatnot. More power to you. I mean, like, that's a big part of art, honestly, is trying to make it in spite of the monetary problems. So I respect the hell out of it and found things to like about it, and I'm really curious to see what happens with the movie next. Like, the tracking is in like the $5 million range at the box office. It's only opening in like less than 2,000 theaters. It's not like a super wide release. It'll have some IMAX screens throughout the country. And yeah, I mean, awards, obviously very skeptical, right? Like a movie like this, which has so much indulgence to it, but also the fact that it goes against form in a lot of ways. I don't think that's going to really latch on with the Film Academy. So yeah, I wouldn't get your hopes up on that. Maybe some smaller awards bodies. But yeah, let me know, what did you think of Megalopolis? There's a lot to think about with it, that's for sure. Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.